Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. Ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to the NFL Draft. In fact, we are 3 rounds into the NFL Draft, and that's what we are doing on today's video. We are going to go over all of the fantasy relevant picks, and I'm going to try to give brief thoughts, projections of where these rookies will land and what that means for their situation and for the players around them. Obviously, this is very exciting times in the fantasy world, especially for Dynasty, but also for redraft. We can finally get these rookies into our rankings, knowing where they are and what kind of opportunities they have ahead for them. We're just going to go through the draft as the picks happened, talk about the player, the situation, and how I think they can perform this season. But before that, make sure you smash that subscribe button that's down there, the one that says subscribe, and comment down below your favorite pick of the draft so far. Without further ado, let's hop straight into it. The 101, Cam Ward, going to the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, we knew this was the case for most of the offseason here. Titans desperately needed the quarterback, and they went in and got their guy in Cam Ward. In last week's video, I kind of gave what I think could be his floor and ceiling for this season. I think he's going to be in that quarterback 2 range. The weapons around him are a little haphazard. Obviously, Ridley should be a stud for them. Got a couple of running backs that have been there a couple of years now. But overall, I think it'll be a decent situation. Definitely not the worst situation for a first overall pick that we've seen in recent memory. So I think Cam Ward can have a really solid season. Again, not a guy who's going to go out and get you a ton of rushing upside. Has mobility in the pocket, but is really a pass-first guy. I don't expect him to have super rushing numbers or anything like that, but should be a talented guy, obviously, as indicated by the first overall pick. And this draft wasted no time with some fireworks as Jacksonville moved up to the number 2 spot. Instead of the Cleveland Browns taking Travis Hunter, the generational talent, the two-way guy. And now reports have come out that he is going to be mostly at wide receiver with packages to play cornerback, which is obviously excellent for his fantasy value. BTJ last year, now Travis Hunter. This could arguably be the best young duo of wide receivers in this season and seasons to come. It ultimately comes down to Trevor Lawrence. He really should be taking a jump with this move. In theory, it is great for his value, great for Travis Hunter's value. I really think this was a home run spot for Travis. I'm glad he didn't have to go to Cleveland, although you could argue Jacksonville's not much better. But love this spot for Travis. A lot of these guys in the first round, I really love their landing spots and expect some really big things out of this rookie class. Moving on, the clear number 1 running back in the draft, Ashton Jeanty. No surprise, top 10. Going number 6 to the Raiders. Home run landing spot for Jeanty, obviously. He is going to be the feature back, the bell cow. Only other guy they have is Mostert. So this is clearly Jeanty's backfield. And we know that Geno likes to dump the ball down. Jeanty didn't need to be used too much at Boise State as a receiver. But I really think he can put up some surprising receiving stats this season. I see him easily a top 10 running back, maybe even higher than that. I think his ceiling truly could be the RB1 this season. I don't think that's an overreaction or out of the question. I think Jeanty could legitimately be the RB1 this season. Moving on to another fantastic landing spot, truly the top of the first round prime spots for these players, and that is Tet McMillan going to the Carolina Panthers with the 8th pick. Obviously, Carolina needs an alpha dog. Adam Thielen is getting way too old to be a number 1 receiver. And so Carolina made that move, getting Tet McMillan. Obviously, this should elevate Bryce, getting him a huge target. Hopefully one he can even see as a fellow short guy. I expect big things for Tet McMillan. I know he's not a great separator, all this, all that, but he should be able to get the jump balls Bryce throws his way. I think McMillan will have a huge target share. He could easily finish as a top 24 wide receiver and much better than that. Great landing spot for McMillan as long as Bryce Young continues to elevate his game, as he showed at the end of last season. Moving on, we've got the 2 stud tight ends, and shockingly, Colston Loveland went first, and that was at pick 10 to the Chicago Bears. Now this one's a little bit interesting. Obviously, Cole Kmet is going nowhere, so maybe they're expecting to play a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets with Kmet and Loveland, which I think could work perfectly. Could play very well into Caleb Williams' hands. I think Loveland might be a better receiving option than Kmet. Obviously, at this point, we aren't for sure. A lot of receiving options are going into Chicago, so we're going to need to see where this target share is breaking up. There might be a lot of mouths to feed at this point, but really like Loveland. And then right behind him, Tyler Warren goes to the Indianapolis Colts at pick 14. I personally thought Warren would go before Loveland, so this was a little bit shocking. But I think this was the Colts guy all along. A little bit of a do-it-all tight end, much like George Kittle. Now, quarterback situation is going to be a little hairy this season. Honestly, we might want Daniel Jones just for a fantasy upside for Warren. Anthony Richardson is at quarterback, probably going to be a little less productive in this first season. But I really think Tyler Warren is a good talent. Easily should be a tight end one, top 10 tight end. I think both of these guys, Loveland and Warren, should and could be top tight ends for this fantasy season. Next, we had Emeka Egbuka going pick 19 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And at first, this one is a little bit of a head scratcher, right? Obviously, the Bucs have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan, who they just drafted last year, who had a little bit of promise. But when you dive into it a little bit deeper, Evans obviously getting older, heading into the last year of his contract. Chris Godwin coming off a brutal ankle injury. And I kind of view Godwin and Emeka as similar guys, slot guys, good possession receivers, not going to stretch it down the field too much. So it might not all come together for Egbuka on this first season, although I'm sure he'll get plenty of run as their wide receiver 3. But in the seasons to come, I think he's going to be a real top option for the Buccaneers. This should only elevate Baker, He's got another weapon to go to, another safe weapon over the middle in the slot. Well, we'll kind of have to see how everyone is shaping up as far as Godwin return off the injury. A little bit of a head scratcher at first, but I really do like this spot, at least long-term speaking, for Emeka. Next, we had the second running back drafted in the first round, second of 2, I should say, and that is Omarion Hampton. He is heading to LA, the Chargers, pick 22, and this is kind of the end of the Najee Harris hype, right? When Najee made the signing this offseason free agency, I thought, wow, perfect spot for Najee. He should be able to eat up a bunch of touches. And then they go and draft a running back in the first round. So obviously Najee is going to be in the mix. He's going to be getting some of those bruiser touches. But Hampton should be the far superior athlete and talent and prospect. He's really a 3-down guy who can do it all. So I'm sure they will get Najee going, especially at the beginning of the season. But as it wears on, I think they're going to want to get the ball to their new playmaker in Hampton. I think he could be in line for a very solid rookie season. Obviously, LA wants to pound the rock. That's kind of the Harbaugh way. He's invested in that offensive line. So I really think Hampton, he could explode. Kind of a bummer for Najee Harris fans. I thought it was a great landing spot until obviously this pick here. Just one pick later, the Green Bay Packers come up and select Matthew Golden out of Texas, the speedster. And this is Green Bay's first receiver in the first round in over 20 years. So obviously Green Bay fans are elated. I think he's going to be a really good field stretcher for Jordan Love in these Packers. Obviously this wide receiver room is very crowded. We got Dobbs, Wicks, Watson had the ACL, of course. But there are so many weapons in Green Bay. Jaden Reed, obviously. So it's going to be muddled. We're going to have to really kind of figure out what the depth chart is, where the target share is. And we know they have Josh Jacobs still, who obviously a bell cow back, a guy they want to get 20, 25 touches. So we really have to see where this depth chart is breaking out for the Green Bay Packers. They have a lot of weapons, and they added one later in the draft who we'll get to in a bit. A little foreshadow there. So they are just adding lots of weapons in the receiving core. We're going to have to see how it shakes out. And the final offensive fantasy relevant weapon of the first round goes to the New York Giants, Jackson Dart. Giants fans, you get your hopeful QB of the future. Obviously, Shador was talked about as maybe the number 2 quarterback in this draft, but not so fast. It is Jackson Dart. Obviously, they signed Russ and Jameis in the offseason. So Dart, speaking on this season, obviously I don't believe he'll start. Russ should be the starter. We'll see if at the end of the season Dart gets some run. So he might not be super fantasy relevant this season, but for dynasty owners, a first-round quarterback, he's obviously going to be a hot commodity. Lots of swag, some rushing upside, and is going to have a chance to learn behind two great guys in Russ and Jameis. That'll be a heck of a quarterback room to be involved with. So that was all for the first round of the draft on Thursday night. But last night, Friday night, 2 rounds, the second and third round, obviously, lots of fantasy relevant guys, huge playmakers that are going to have massive impacts. So just because they weren't a first round guy does not mean that they are going to be irrelevant. In fact, this is where a lot of our studs to be found will be in these rounds of the draft. And none further than Jaden Higgins, pick 34, so the second pick of the second round, heading to Houston. Obviously, they need more weapons besides Nico. Tank is out with the gruesome knee injury. Stephon Diggs left in free agency. So before this, it was just Nico, and they've got a massive weapon here in Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State, who should be just a great number 2 for them. I think Stroud will really have a bounce-back year after the tough sophomore season that was last year. Excellent opportunity for Higgins to thrive. Moving on, Quinshon Judkins heads to the Cleveland Browns, pick 36. This is going to be their workhorse guy, right? They have Jerome Ford, obviously. Nick Chubb has not signed back yet. There's still talks, but after drafting a guy like Judkins, I doubt you go back to Nick Chubb, who's had multiple knee injuries. Judkins is a bruiser. Surprising, speed and burst, obviously. I think Judkins can really carry a good load. He did not really miss many games in his college career, which is obviously a huge talent in of itself. Excellent landing spot for Judkins. And then none later, his Ohio State teammate, 2 picks later, Travion Henderson, heading to New England, pick 38. A home run spot for both of these guys, which I'm very excited about. I think a lot of these rookie running backs are going to be able to display their talent just to where they got drafted. All I have to say is a big loser of this draft is Ramondre Stevenson. I think he'll still take some of that bruiser work, much like Najee Harris will in LA. But Henderson is a lightning bolt. He could honestly be the Jahmyr Gibbs to Ramondre's David Montgomery in obviously a lesser fashion. But that's kind of what I'm getting with these 2 players. Ramondre's going to ram it up the middle, take the tough carries, tough yards, while Travion uses his quickness, his speed, his burst. I really like this, and I think Drake May is really going to like his new running back. Just to pick later, Chicago adds another weapon, and that's Luther Burden out of Missouri, a guy who's very polarizing. Obviously had a lot of college production the year before he came out, but the year he came out, a little up and down, so we really need to see what kind of Luther Burden we're getting. Obviously, Chicago is loading up on weapons. Ben Johnson is giving Caleb Williams every opportunity to go out and succeed this season. We just need to see if he takes the reins and runs. We just need to see if he takes charge and really makes that next step in his sophomore season. Speaking of quarterbacks, the next pick, Tyler Shaw. I don't know how to say his last name, but it don't matter. He's headed to New Orleans. Looks like the Saints have their quarterback of the future. We've heard recently Derek Carr, shoulder injury all of a sudden, up in the air of whether he can even play this year. So that puts So that puts Tyler Shuff in a great position to fight for the starting job right out of the gates. Obviously, Spencer Rattler's still there, but we kind of saw what he has last season, and it's nothing spectacular. So I think the Saints might have their guy of the future, depending on Derek Carr's health, and I think Derek Carr will really be a good mentor for him. A little bit of an older guy, 25 already, so should be mature. Saints got their quarterback. And then we have a little run of tight ends here in the middle of the second round. First being Mason Taylor heading to the New York Jets. Jason Taylor's son, famous defensive end who was a stud for the Dolphins back in the day. Should be the Jets starting tight end. Should be a solid guy. Obviously, quarterback situation right now, Justin Fields isn't the most accurate thrower of the football. Mason Taylor should be a starting tight end this season for the New York Jets and should be a solid fantasy option. Next, Terrence Ferguson heading to the Rams. We know McVay and the Rams love to get a good tight end going. Higbee has obviously made a living off of it the last few years. But Higbee's injuries are really piling up. I think Terrence Ferguson can easily fight for this starting job. I really think Terrence Ferguson is in a great spot here with Matthew Stafford, Puka and Devontae on the outside. He should be wide open over the middle all season long. Interesting spot for Terrence Ferguson, I'm not going to lie. He should come up the rankings a little bit. And the last tight end of this little tight end run in the middle of the second, Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, heading to my Seattle Seahawks. Little surprised they did this move. I know we got Noah Fant. I liked what I saw out of the rookie A.J. Barner last year, but we're bolstering that tight end room. Seattle obviously liked what they saw with Arroyo to make a second-round pick on him. Obviously, a lot of moving pieces in Seattle. So Darnold's coming to town, new receiving core, Cooper Kupp, JSN, obviously DK and Lockett left. So it's going to be a huge mix-up in Seattle. We really have to see where everything shakes out. I'm not sure exactly where I stand on Arroyo at this moment, but nothing too sexy for sure. But next is a sexy pick that I'm very excited about, and that is Trey Harris to the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert's got a wide receiver too, finally. Ladd and Harris should be an absolute fantastic duo. Quentin Johnson truthers, if there are any, which I doubt there are. QJ is going to take a back seat to Trey Harris. I can almost guarantee it. He was a stud at Ole Miss, and I expect nothing to change. I really like this player for Herbert and the Los Angeles Chargers. Herbert's getting some studs on the offensive side of the ball. We love to see that. And the Raiders finally got their wide receiver too in Jack Beck out of TCU. Obviously, I've been a huge Jacoby Myers fan so far into the offseason, and this really doesn't change anything. In fact, this helps. This will help take a little bit of stress off of Jacoby, off of Brock Bowers. Las Vegas is quietly putting together a great little offense. Genty and Beck to go with their guys they've got in Myers and Bowers. I really like the potential of this Raiders team with Geno coming in at the quarterback position. And then a guy who went a little higher than I was expecting in RJ Harvey, heading to Denver at pick 60 in the second round. He's an excellent back, don't get me wrong. I was just a little surprised of guys he went ahead of. But we know Sean Payton really likes to have a backfield by committee. Obviously, Javante's gone, but McLaughlin, Estime are still there. I think Harvey should be the head of this trio, but Payton is willing to ride the hot hand, so it really puts an interesting kind of notion to what Harvey can be. We'll see if he's a guy that Sean Payton trusts, because that goes a long way to playing time and opportunity as a whole. And then the last of these kind of tight ends that were supposed to go in this range, Harold Fannin Jr. going to Cleveland. Obviously, they have Njoku there, but they love to have two tight ends. Last year, Jordan Akins obviously had a random solid season in like his 10th season. So Cleveland likes to have the two tight end set. Stefanski likes a little ground and pound, and then also play actions with the 12 personnel, right? Obviously, we have to see who's playing quarterback for Cleveland. But Harold Fannin, I don't know so much about this season, but as a dynasty player, he should be a solid tight end in years to come. Njoku's getting a little bit older. So next, a guy straight out of Washington State. Go Cougs. And that is my boy Kyle Williams, heading up to the Northeast New England Patriots as Drake May gets himself another weapon. This New England roster has lots of young receiving talent. Pop Douglas, Jalen Polk, Kayshon Boutte, and now Kyle Williams, all behind newly acquired Stephon Diggs. So a lot of young guys to learn from, a wily vet coming off the ACL. This is another spot we have to see where these darn targets are going. Lots of young guys, and we need to see who shakes their way to the top of the pecking order behind Stephon Diggs. But you got to give credit to these coaches, giving Drake May and Caleb Williams lots of receiving options, giving them really no excuse, and filling out their rosters with lots of young receiving talent. You really love to see that from a fantasy perspective. At this point in the draft, we kind of head into a little bit of an area where teams obviously have players they're much higher on than the mock drafts and the consensus, because these are guys we were not expecting really to go day two. And this is Isaac Tesla, if that's how you even pronounce it, heading to Detroit as pick 70. And I'm going to be quite honest with you, I don't know much about this guy at all. Must have been a guy that Dan Campbell really liked in their interview process, because I was not expecting this guy to go day two. But they really do need to fill out their receiving depth. Behind Amon-Ra and Jameson, there's really not much going on there at the receiver position in Detroit. So we'll see if this, third-round rookie gets himself some playing time. Another guy, Pat Bryant, to the Denver Broncos at pick 74. Just not a guy I was expecting to go day 2. But again, the young quarterbacks, now Bo Nix, are getting these young receivers to really build some chemistry with. And outside of Cortland Sutton in Denver, there's not a clear pecking order behind Sutton. So maybe Bryant is the guy who can work his way into that wide receiver 2 role. Not a guy I was expecting to go this early, but a guy I was expecting to go this early, and maybe even earlier. Jalen Noel heads to Houston to rejoin with his Iowa State teammate Jaden Higgins. Lovely story. We'll see if both guys pay off for the Houston Texans, who obviously, like I said earlier, needed some guys behind Nico Collins. And so they brought the Iowa State boys down to Houston and said, let's ride. So Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, CJ Stroud's going to be your new quarterback. And I think it's going to go quite well for you boys. So solid pick from the Houston Texans in the middle to the end of the 3rd round. Next is a player and a landing spot that I absolutely love, and that is Caleb Johnson heading to Pittsburgh. Caleb Johnson is an absolute beast, a bruiser, and there's no better place to go than Pittsburgh for that kind of back. I was not in the belief that they were going to ride out Jaylen Warren as their starter. I figured they needed a beefy running back. Tomlin has always liked a guy who's bigger in stature and can pound it up the middle in those cold months in Pittsburgh. And Caleb Johnson is just the guy to do it. He is their new Najee Harris, but more talented in my opinion. I really love this landing spot for Caleb Johnson, and I think he could be a top 24 running back this season. We are getting down to it now, folks. Green Bay has added another receiving option, Savion Williams out of TCU. Gives me Quentin Johnston vibes. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say it. Of course, it's because he's from TCU, much like QJ. But Packers, that receiving room is super, super crowded. Like I said earlier, we just need to see how things shake up. But no shortage of options for Jordan Love. That's for darn sure. And to end out the 3rd round, a couple of quarterbacks. And no, not the one you're expecting. Shedeur Sanders does not go in day 2. But Jalen Milroe does. He comes to my Seattle Seahawks. And I absolutely love this pick. This is a pure upside play from John Schneider and the Seahawks. Obviously, they have Sam Darnold. They re-signed Drew Lock. I love the upside play of Jalen Milroe. An absolute stud of an athlete. We know this. Lamar Jackson speed. Obviously not the wiggle and shake that Lamar has, but truly just an absolute great athlete. We just need to see if he can be able to throw the ball whatsoever. If he can, he will avoid turning into the next Anthony Richardson and turn into the next Lamar Jackson. Love this pick. Love the upside. Am I biased? Yes, I do not care. Love this pick for the Seattle Seahawks. And next, the Cleveland Browns might have found their quarterback of the future in Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. Pick 94. Obviously, he's the lefty. He's been in college forever, it feels like. As a 3rd-round pick, he's not guaranteed the starting job, obviously. But I think he has a very good chance to fight for it. Now, the situation, is it that great? I don't know. Cleveland doesn't have a ton of weapons outside of Jerry Jeudy, who, in my opinion, isn't that great of an option. Good tight ends, Njoku. Obviously, they drafted Fannin, like I said earlier. We'll have to see if they give Dylan Gabriel the starting opportunity, but a very interesting guy. Not expected to go this early, in my opinion. And the last and final fantasy-relevant guy, Ty Felton, heading to the Vikings, a wide receiver out of Maryland in the last pick of the 3rd round. Again, not a guy I know too much about, but Minnesota trying to get a little bit of depth behind Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and they're trying to do so with 3rd-round pick Ty Felton. Those are the skill position players that have been drafted in the first 3 rounds. Some guys to be on the lookout for in day 3 that we're expecting to have some potential fantasy value. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders, the shock of the draft so far, not getting picked through 3 rounds. We'll have to see where he ends up. As far as running backs go, we've got the bruiser Cam Scatabo out of Arizona State, speedster Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, and then the stud from Kansas, Devin Neal. Those are the top 3 running backs remaining. As far as receivers, We're looking at Jalen Royals out of Utah State. A little bit surprised he did not go yet. Torrey Horton from Colorado State. Ayumanor from Stanford. Isaiah Bond from Texas. Plenty of solid receiving options left. So those are the guys we're kind of keeping an eye on in day 3 to see where they land. That's going to do it for the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. Comment down below, guys, you're very excited about their landing spot or for your own team. Are you excited like I am with Jalen Milroe? Make sure you smash that like button. Like I said earlier, hit the subscribe button. Can't wait to get these guys into the rankings. More content to come soon. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click on this video to watch as well, or go ahead and click on my logo to subscribe. Thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.